Okay, so we're going to go back to security. So I know we've had RCS security. We're going to continue this panel with looking at the overall network, voice, messaging, security, landscape. And so I have here three distinguished panelists. Is it okay if I call you distinguished? Yes. And maybe what we'll do is that maybe we'll start with, let's see if we got a mic. Yes, we'll just pass it on. Maybe we do a bit of introduction first. There you go. Maybe Sizo, you want to kick off and tell me, yourself, your background, Infobip. Yep.
My name is Sizo. Sizo Nkosi. I'm a Telco Carrier Relations Manager at Infobip. We provide solutions to the telcos, but also partner with telcos to allow them to enable solutions for the enterprises. But also, sorry, this is the first time I'm on stage on a panel, so please forgive me if I'm very nervous. But we work with telcos a lot, and I manage the SADC region for Infobip.
Thank you. Monwabisi, Mabude?
Yes, hi everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay. My name is Monwabisi. You can call me Mo. I'm a senior manager at Telkom. I look after quite a number of portfolios. One of them is WASP portfolio, which looks after all aggregators, messaging, DCB, as the last panel was discussing DCB. And another portfolio that I look after is interconnect, which is interconnection between operators. And third portfolio that I look after is international services that looks after roaming and also international calling and interconnect.
Thank you, Mo. Advocate Thokozani.
Thank you. My name is Advocate Thokozani Mvelase. I'm the CEO for COMRIC. So COMRIC is an association that was formed by the MNOs and the telcos. Its founders is Telkom, Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, and Liquid Technologies. The focus for COMRIC is around the issues of crime, risk, and security in the telco space. What we do is it's a collaboration effort by the industry to make sure that we can share various threat intelligence data and that we can also work with law enforcement on various projects. That's what we do from a COMRIC point of view.
Okay, so thank you again. So maybe I'll kick off the first question to Sizo. We talk about, this is a security topic. So from your perspective, what are the most prevalent, the biggest security threats facing African telecom operators today?
From my experience working with, firstly in retail, in the telecom space, I've witnessed, fraud across physical fraud, which COMRIC seeks to address with identity theft. But now, the more prevalent one that we're facing is, more cybersecurity-related fraud across messaging or communication, where we're seeing a lot of spam, phishing, smishing that's taking place on, core communication channels like SMS, voice. And I would say that's, the biggest one. And now the more upcoming or biggest challenge would be artificially generated traffic fraud.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I think you've outlined all the different areas of security threats that we have today. So maybe my next question is to Mo. From Telkom perspective, you've seen, you handle the security aspect of Telkom. What are the main limitations of existing solutions today, from your point of view?
I think in terms of what we in terms of the product side, and then the solutions that we look into implement to mitigate these threats and fraud, is sort of a regulatory part of that controls what we do and what solutions we implement, and it's something that that sort of limits us in terms of addressing it fully, and then also ensuring that we don't lose revenue. That's one aspect I can mention.
Okay. And then, so I'm going to maybe, to advocate Thokozani on the regulatory perspective. We talk about framework and best practice. How has it evolved, to address the challenges, or even the today as well as the future? How from where you stand?
Look, I have a perspective when it comes to frameworks or standards or even regulation, that what you said as a regulation now will not be applicable tomorrow. It's good to follow best practice because you need to have some level of standards. But I think the danger over the years is that we frame regulations or standards as if we handcuff ourselves so that we can't even be adaptive to the changes in the criminal world. So, and I always say that the more regulation you put, you're creating opportunities for the criminals. At the same time, you don't want a free-for-all. You have to put some level of standard. I think we need to move to a world that we need to make sure that it does not take us too long to review regulations or standards. And I think that's a challenge that we have from a regulation point of view, that we have a long-standing regulations, and I think it takes anything between 5 to 10 years to change any regulation most of the time. But at that time, the criminal world adapts, changes, revolves. I think with the technology evolvement, so is the new crime and the new threats. And the regulations that we have at the moment cannot always keep up with it. I think we need to find a model that is a hybrid. That's where I come when it comes to issues of regulations.
Yeah, and back to Sizo, I think I want to, I think in terms of addressing that, okay, we've seen firewall as a solution in addressing some of these, challenges, security threats. How effective are they? I mean, is firewall the only solution, or should we look at other methods? Yep.
Firewalls are very effective in addressing all of these challenges, especially the fraud that we have. But again, we have limitations on what we can and cannot do, with telcos or the players in the market. We as vendors have developed very well, very good firewall solutions. But at the same time, A2P or fraud is very, fast evolving. But we're able to, process messaging at very large scales, utilizing machine learning and AI-driven capabilities. So I would say, the biggest challenge from an African perspective is, how fast regulation allows what we can do, or how, limited our capabilities will be to prevent fraud.
Okay. And so to follow on that question, that answer, I mean, we have to look at the numbers. I mean, so in terms of, and I think obviously, Mo, you're the best person, how does it impact the revenue? And the threats and the security leakage, where do you see, what percentage or numbers that we're talking about here in terms of fraud on revenue leakage?
It is impacting operators a lot. If I can mention that, how, not necessarily quantifying it, but how it impacts, because when you look at, let's say for voice bypass, is we're supposed to get revenue from international players, and which we charge international rates. And what you find is that that traffic does not come directly and as international traffic. It's seen as a local traffic. Therefore, they pay a local rate. And then when you look at some of the traffic, you find that that traffic is redirected to other operators with the SIM box cases where you find our number ranges and our resources are used, and that traffic lands on another network. We pay interconnect in terms of the traffic. So it's a double-edged sword, which is on the international, we're losing revenue, and then also we pay other operators in terms of that.
Yeah.
Same as, or similar to case with the SMS. With international players, we supposed to also get international revenue, but that traffic is charged at the local rate. So it's affecting operators, and we are expected also to invest in terms of the tools that's available in the industry, and that is costing a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Advocate, do you want to add to give more color to this conversation? Yes.
Well, not color. I think also more importantly, I think where COMRIC is, we see what all the MNOs see from just one scale. And I think one thing I can mention when it comes to the interconnect or network bypass fraud, one of the reasons why it goes a lot undetected, it's a very complex type of fraud. And I think what we've identified, the level of skills that we probably have in the continent to even be able to identify that such type of fraud is very limited. To give you a picture, we've had quite a lot of operation with law enforcement that involves the issues of SIM box, where the SIM box machines are used to do that network bypass. And we found that a lot of people that are doing that, in the South African term, we call them, they are foreign nationals. And also when it gets to the law enforcement element and our court justice system, the knowledge around that is very limited. So that is why we find it goes undetected and it keeps on escalating. And it's a big challenge for the MNOs in terms of clamping on the interconnect or network bypass fraud. It's a big challenge that we have.
Sizo, anything to add?
Yeah. So, one of the reasons why there's so much fraud, I mean, South Africa, from an African perspective, is very behind when it comes to combating, revenue leakage and international bypass. But at the same time, the more solutions that we bring to the telcos, the more aggregators and other players will try and take advantage of, the security that we'll put in place to protect the network's revenue. And then this is why you will have issues or SIM-box issues or other ways of terminating fraud. But at the same time, there's also a level of greed across, international players, OTT players, or firewall vendors. What we're also seeing is a large entrant of new players in the space that come in the guise of wanting to protect, to provide solutions to the MNO, overcommitting to the MNOs, and in turn, to try and recover the revenue that they've committed. We're starting to see more and more artificially generated traffic. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Right. But I think also we have to look at the flip side. There could be new revenue streams coming from enhanced. If you put the right security solutions in place, we might see new revenue. And I wonder, Mo, you have thoughts on if Telecom view on that? Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the opportunities for new revenue streams, it's the partnerships that we will look at in terms of ensuring that our network is secured. and the legitimate traffic lands on our network, and we are able to also pay for what, like in terms of the interconnect, what is due to the other operators, not artificially generated or a masked traffic that is sent on our behalf without us being part of that. And we missed in terms of that revenue. And if it's the revenue that is from international players into South Africa, we get that revenue as international traffic, and therefore it's revenue from international. And I think just to add, in terms of also a new revenue opportunities is the historic agreements that we had with international players were focusing on voice, and those are legacy contracts and never had an opportunity for or a section for SMS to monetize on SMS, because it was seen as it was a value add, but not as a revenue generation opportunity.
Awesome. So back to I think I want to kind of just back to the issue of self-regulation, regulatory question back to Advocate Thokozani, public-private partnership. You mentioned it's a hybrid. So could you expand on that? I mean, and how do we harmonize this? Where do you see we should, as an industry, as a regulator, telcos, the ecosystem move forward?
I think it's critical to understand that it's a shared responsibility. Hence, the private-public partnership becomes more critical. What I will say is that as the industry, we should be best at what we do. We don't have to wait to be told about it. Hence, we need to drive some of the regulations or the framework. The danger is always waiting for the government to regulate you. And normally when they regulate, they impose. Whereas you need to influence the regulation because you are best at what you do. So the private-public partnership becomes very key because it's a shared responsibility. It's not a government responsibility. It's not a private sector responsibility. It's a shared responsibility. It's not about self-regulation. It's about influencing the regulations. That is more critical, and putting the frameworks or the guidelines that are going to support the regulations, because usually the regulations are at a high optimal, but if you don't have guidelines to implement the regulations, that's where the cracks happen. And I think we need to balance it. It's a balancing act.
Sizo, or you have Mo, you have anything to add to that?
I think also on the operator side is solutions are out there, which the private sector is developing, and which are more advanced, and in terms of also update is much faster than what solutions that we can develop as operators. And that partnership, and together with the sort of a flexible regulation that allows or is up to date, then it forms something that is going to help the industry.
Okay. And back to on Sizo and on the Infobip side, how do you navigate? I mean, what do you see requirements, regulatory, different markets in Africa, even the world, but how you guys kind of address the differences and of the different markets that you serve in Africa?
So I think we take a very local approach in the way that we manage regulation, closely corroborating with telcos, understanding, their business rules needs, the needs of, the legislation across the different countries. I think, we also apply global standards to ensure that our systems and the platforms that we build are secure, not only for our customers that use our services, but even for the services that we provide to the telcos. We belong to industry bodies like, the GSMA. We're an association member there. We also contribute to these global standards that are being developed, the frameworks, and would like to, increase that more and more with the different industry bodies that are there, like, for instance, MEF. Yeah.
So I just want to kind of run through a quick fire, maybe last two questions, and give time for Q&A. So predict one major, if we, this is a big topic, and I know it's a lot to cover, but I think if you were to kind of pick one major security trend in the next 2 or 3 years, what would be your advice, prediction? So give a shot on that one. Yes, Advocate Thokozani.
Cyber threat will always be the biggest threat. Within cyber threat, you'll have quite a lot of categories. I think anything driven through data will always be attacked. I always give an example. Let's say we think at a point in time we've addressed ransomware or phishing or smishing, but the problem, it keeps on evolving. So we never get our hands on it. So cyber threat will always be the biggest issue that we have. I mean, if everyone talks about AI, everyone is scared, but they don't see the benefits, they only see the negatives about it, because everyone thinks about the data aspect. So anything that is housing data will always be under threat of cyber attack. And I think for me, I don't think we are ready. We do a catch-up game all the time, because we are in the business of providing solutions. Criminals are in the business of committing crime. So we'll always play catch-up.
Maybe Mo, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to take industry, especially the telcos, because we do have solutions out there, and we just need to apply them. Okay, in terms of technology, machine learning, how do you use machine learning together with AI to ensure that you detect and mitigate these activities in our networks? We haven't started that. So it's still a topic that is in everyone's head, but it's not applied to our benefit and also to address the problems that we're currently facing. That, I think in the next few years, we should be studying and experiencing those.
Sizo?
I have to agree with Advocate. We're definitely going to see more and more cyber threats, which are going to be more AI-driven, harder to detect. But I think we as solution providers are also so up to date with what's currently happening and where we predict the future. So it's going to be a bit harder, but a good challenge, to develop solutions, especially with the growth of more channels like RCS that will come in the future, or something more enhanced.
Okay. We have a minute and a half, so I just want to give a chance for the audience to ask any questions, if any. Yep. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, listening to a lot of the conversation, if you don't think some of the challenges around fraud is actually created by the industry itself. In other words, the MNOs. And we talk about pricing models, for example. You've opened up Pandora's box, and now you've got a problem. So people are trying to circumvent it, for example. Is that not part of the problem?
Yes and no. In some cases, there's a level of abuse that the networks have to protect themselves from, and therefore employing solutions that are developed by the private sector. But at the same time, we also have, aggregators also create. Like I said earlier, there's also a level of greed in terms of how some of the messaging or solutions are commercialized, and that level of greed does drive more ways to try and circumvent.
No, I'm not pretending. Okay, so I will have to agree with Sizo, okay? In terms of, as operators, we look for long-term profits, whereas some of the players in the industry looking for short-term profits. And in that, in the short term, they will find ways to bypass and commit those activities which end up exposing the networks. That's the reality which puts everyone at risk. Yes. Yeah.
I have a two-part question. Part one, we've seen other industry bodies blacklist rogue members. You know, you see ISPs blacklisting their members and publishing if those members are rogue participant. And in this industry, we've seen greedy players. And maybe the question is to the risk managers or to the risk body, what do you think we should do to the members of the self-regulatory body who are actually the greedy players and who are threatening our ecosystem?
So if I come in there, so we're busy at the moment looking at the policies in terms of how, let's say, we blacklist, if I have to use that. To give an example, what normally would happen in our space, you find where there's infrastructure damage or vandalism. In some instances, you find it's the same contractors that our members use. So we're working on the means in terms of making sure that some of those elements are identified and blacklisted from operating. However, we have to do it within legal means. And I think that's always the challenge, that everything that you do, you need to do it within legal means. So there are processes that we are busy with at the moment, because once we identified criminal elements within our networks, we take them as syndicates, and we don't want them to see them grow or go to another industry. We rather blacklist. So as part of our motto as well, we collaborate with other cross industries as well, because we might be dealing with similar type of syndicates or similar types of criminal. So we work with your COMRICs, your pastors, and all of them, so that we can collaborate the effort of crime prevention. It's all about crime prevention. If it's the same criminals, we all have to make sure that they don't survive.
Can I add to that? I think what also in the industry needs to happen is, let's take, for instance, CLI bypass. We know we've got a number regulation plan which prohibits any manipulation on CLI. What happens on our side, we identify the culprit, is we terminate the contract. But there's nothing beyond that. Maybe on the regulation side is a fine to say that, okay, you do the manipulation, we have evidence, therefore this is a fine or whatever is imposed to for that transgression. And then also on the aggregator side, we also know the industry culprits, but we cannot find them. That sits with ICASA, and we just need to improve and ensure that that offense is punishable, and so that it doesn't continue.
And the second part to that question would be to the advocate, what do you need from a industry body like WASPA that somewhat self-regulates both the messaging aspect and part of the value chain, and also for third-party regulators like the DMSA to empower you guys? Because what I see is that you sitting more on the telco side, whereas we as an industry body, we're sitting closer to the consumer side. So what can industry bodies like the DMSA or WASPA do to enable you guys to succeed?
We have to collaborate. and I think we need to agree on the terms of the collaboration. One thing about collaboration, it requires an intent to do something, be it the exchange of information. But as we all know that as the industry, we are regulated in terms of what we can share, what we can't share as well. And so I think WASPA is almost the same. But I think we have to collaborate so that we can have collective actions on whatever we identify as common ground. And we've started collaborating with other industries, and I think I'll be happy also to engage so that we can see how we take the conversation forward, because we can't do it alone, and that's one thing that we identified and we agree. So I will definitely encourage that we collaborate and find those common terms or common grounds that we can make this work.
Okay, I think we are really run out of time, and so we're gonna. But please join me in thanking the panelists. Thank you very much. We are actually going for a break, so I think we have 25 minutes break until until 4. So please continue this conversation. Reach out to each of these panelists and speakers during your break. Continue the networking. And during the break, actually, what I want to say is that we are running, what we have is an MEF data. Part of what we MEF do is that we actually collect data across the globe on many things, messaging, WhatsApp, usage. And so we have done an analysis around Africa. And I think we're just gonna share it on the screen. So feel free to browse through and look at that. And if you have any question regarding what we do at MEF when it comes to data and collection, please reach out to me. Thank you very much. Enjoy your break. Yes.